Hello and welcome to the 6 Plus show, a podcast for your wargaming and 40k needs. Hobby talk, tactics, tournament reports, lore and much more. We have it all. Please welcome your host for the evening, Tom.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed sons of Sanguinius, to that 6 Plus show. It's midweek. We're all tired, but we're here. We're here to give you what you crave, more conversation about 40k. And today we're going to be talking about play styles, which is very exciting. But first, who am I joined by? I'm joined by, on one side, Chris. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
What have you been doing, Chris?
I have been time travelling back to about a month ago and frantically painting Harlequins.
Nice.
Because obviously I like to be a bit outdated like that. But,
yes.
The Custodian nerf has kind of ruined Custodies for me. Mm-hmm. And I've had these Harlequins on a back burner, so I'm frantically painting for the Birmingham GT in 2 weeks' time.
Very nice. Do you think psychologically it's interesting? Because obviously Harlequins were nerfed, but you'd never played them. Is it a case of if you're not playing them when they're nerfed, you don't really feel it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not used to this supposed weakness.
Yes.
We had a couple of practice games. We had a game.
It's very fun.
Thousand Sons as well. Yeah, they're just a really fun army to play. I've given myself 3 weeks to paint about half the army. Didn't really do anything last week, so I've now got 2 weeks to paint half the army, which is probably about 15 troops and a couple of characters. And then Jamie's going to airbrush my 3 Void Weavers for me.
Lovely, airbrush Void Weavers. Oh, you're going to run some Void Weavers in the end then?
Yeah, I'm going to run 3.
I like 3. I think 3 is nice.
I think it's just, I missed, when I played without them, I missed having any form of long-range shooting. So, barring Shuriken, so I think just the 3. Tasty little 3. Whether it's going to be 3 1s or 1 3, I'm undecided.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You can make the case for all those things. Yeah. That's definitely interesting. It's going to be hard to ever emotionally come back from 22-inch movement, Chris. Trust me on that. Once you've had that, it's very hard to ever go back. Yeah. I'm also joined tonight by Jamie. Say hello, Jamie.
Hello, Jamie.
Jamie, what's new with you?
I was frantically painting up some Blood Angels for a little doubles tournament we had this weekend.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, my list was illegal, so I got a slap wrist for that.
Oh, really? What happened?
Not fluffy enough.
Obviously, for a fluffy doubles tournament.
Chaser.
So it has to fit in a patrol, and each unit's not allowed to exceed 14 power level. I had a Death Company and Sanguinary Guard squad both exceeding 14 power level. So I was like, damn. But my entire list is all troops and elites for 2,000 points. Because it has to fit in a patrol, I couldn't actually fill it out really to without putting, sort of 3 or 4 troop units in a list, which was a bit dull really. So I moved over to Grey Knights. And then wrote a Grey Knights list, submitted that, got slapped on the wrist again for having 2 Interceptor squads and I was only allowed 1. So I thought, I'll just bump them together and submit that, combat squad them later. They slapped my wrist again because that was over 14 power level. So I had 3 lists all turned down.
You're the worst kind of person, Jamie, it seems.
I'm horrendous. Fortunately, it was the other Jamie who was submitting them. I was just forwarding to him, so he looks bad, not me. And eventually I've now settled on a list that's legal.
That'll be fun, though. Is that doubles, you say?
Yeah, so Jamie's
what's
running
the combo?
Sisters. He's running Bloody Rose Sisters.
Yeah.
And I'm going for Rapier's Grey Knights with all the infantry, not a single Dread Knight. So
that's very fun. I think that'd be an interesting combo. That should work very well.
Yeah, hopefully. So I was originally painting up Blood Angels. I'm sulking now because I can't write a list legally. So now I've just got a few Grey Knights to paint up. And I also accidentally purchased some AOS models, so I've been building those as well.
Very nice. Maybe we can get Blood Angels on the channel soon, seeing as they have been a passion project of yours. Be cool to have them out.
Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful, okay. Well, not much to report on my front. I played Age of Sigmar by accident a couple of weeks ago. That was very fun. I went to an RTT and played Gravelords, and I love Age of Sigmar. It's very good. Can report it is very fun. If you like smashing stuff into the middle and having a big old ruckus with heroes, it's the game for you. And I enjoyed it a lot. I managed to win 1 game against a very sad, deflated Disciples of Tzeentch player who was having a bad day, but otherwise took my medicine against Fire Slayers and some orc Kragnos, the big centaur that kills people. Good times. And now I'm going to have to paint Night Lords for 2 weeks because I let the internet tell me what to do, and that's what you get.
Should have learned, Tom.
I should have known. Known, but I'm well up for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Awesome. Okay. Right. What we're going to do? We canvassed out into the internet and into our friend circle for a few questions. We said we were going to chat playstyles and finding the army for you. And so we've got a few questions from people, which we're going to start rattling through and answering in a little bit. But I guess the first thing for a few minutes is for us to just outline broadly what kinds of 40k play styles we think there are. Obviously, it's a massively diverse game. There's a lot of different ways to play the game, a lot of different armies. So it's unsurprising that styles and approaches and types of gameplay differ massively, and there's lots of different ways to play it. So I guess, we've been playing a while. We've seen all sorts of different things. So I'm going to open it up to you guys to have a think. Let's see what kind of play styles we can come up with, what kind of broad categories and types of play style you've seen in your long and storied 40k careers. Maybe if we start with you, Jamie, what's a 40k play style you've encountered?
So when I was originally used to play sort of 5th, 6th and 7th edition, the sort of playstyle I used to go for was sort of an Alpha Strike / Beta Strike army. I ran Farsight Enclaves with the Farsight Bomb, where you drop in sort of 10 Crisis and a load of drones and try and blow your opponent away in that one turn and then hope they can't retaliate. And then also run Grey Knights then with a Drago Wing, which is not quite as devastating, but a similar sort of thing. They drop down, kill a load of stuff, and then they survive a little bit better. Yeah,
and Paladin Bomb was quite like that, wasn't it, as well? And that was, so Alpha and Beta Strike. I'm gonna get Chris to do graphics. That's one. Put it on the board. It's on the board now. Sorry, Chris. Alpha and Beta Strike.
Fortunately, he's not too busy. So they were sort of a fun army to play because they were right there in your opponent's nose, and they felt like they had a game because they'd kill a lot afterwards, and you'd kill a lot, and you just hope that they didn't, wipe you off the board. Back then, it was a bit more simplistic because you just scored objectives at the end, so you'd hope you'd kill enough of their stuff that they couldn't then go on to score objectives. But I think with the change to 9th edition and objectives being sort of progressive, there's a lot more mobility required. So I think a lot of the previous playstyles of castling or leaving everything off the board and dropping in is not really possible now. So I think people have to sort of look at more mobile armies or things that are going to spread out across the board across the course of the game. So I myself have sort of like a mobile army. I originally went with Drukhari when I first got back into it as one of my sort of armies I looked at, but I don't know, something just didn't really click. They were super mobile, but not really durable enough for me. So I then sort of moved to Grey Knights, now looking at Blood Angels. So they're still mobile, but they're mobile with units that can hopefully stick around. So they sort of progress across the board in a more routine manner, should we say, rather than just throwing a unit across the board 30 inches and hope it hides or ties something up in combat to survive. I like sort of an army that will slowly spread it. Not slowly, I mean, they're still moving 12 inches a turn.
I was going to say, you're listing fast armies there, Jamie. Those are definitely proactive mobile armies, I think. They're
no Death Guard, but
no.
I like board control armies, I guess, is the thing. I got Tau because I enjoyed the way Tau played before, back when I played. Don't really like the castle of I'm going to hide in my corner, which I know you've faced recently.
I had a castle game quite recently,
But the playstyle doesn't really excite me. I'm just going to hide in my corner. It's very uninteractive. Try and blow you off the board and then sneak out on objectives late on. I think a board control army is just more entertaining for both players, really. I'm going to spread out across the board. You're going to kill some stuff. I'm going to hopefully not die and kill some stuff in return, and we're both going to lose a lot of models and have fun. So
I think proactive board control is definitely an archetype. You go and get things. You're forward moving. You've usually got speed. You've usually got melee offense as well as ranged offense, and you try and get out and make things happen and affect the game, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I suppose castling and some other armies perhaps fall more under sort of reactive defensive style play, right? Where it's about
style,
it's about shooting what stuff off as it appears, or taking, grinding things down very steadily from a place of security and safety. Obviously, you get some quite techie armies like Craftworlds and Thousand Suns, where they are very able to play and score the game without having to go out too far too early, and they take their time and they create pressure for the opponent in a different way, right? Because the pressure is, if you don't get in here and interrupt what I'm doing, I'm just going to win, which is very different to I'm coming to get you. Can you deal with it? This is more, if you don't come and get me, and it's not easy to do, then you've got a problem. And the closer you get, the more dangerous I get as well. So that kind of reactive defensive versus proactive board control, I think two different archetypes within the game as it currently stands, for sure. How about you, Chris? Any types that you've encountered?
Yeah, so I kind of split my list into, I think about how you're going to kind of break them down. And initially I just came up with, as you said, like you either have a defensive mindset or an attacking mindset.
Yeah, definitely.
And your defensive mindset is probably meaning that you're going to lean more towards the shooting style armies.
Yeah.
And if you have an attacking mindset, you're probably going to lean more likely into like the combat style of things. Obviously, there are multiple examples where that isn't the case. But I think as a general rule, you're probably going to be slightly more one than the other.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Some will be very much one, some will be very much another.
Where do you fall on that spectrum, would you say?
Well, I was thinking about this, and I've spoken to people about this actually. So when I was younger, I used to play chess a bit, and I was very much a defensive kind of player who wanted to react to what the opponent was doing. I used to play war games, like those old like historical war games with my dad. We used to do Napoleonic Wars. He would be the French, I'd be the British. I'd sit there, shoot as he walked up to me, and could I kill him in time? Play cricket at quite a serious level, and I was always like quite a defensive player. As I've got older, I've become more and more aggressive. And so like in cricket, I'm a far more aggressive player now. And in terms of my play style, I'd much rather being the one pushing and trying to make the plays and make things happen rather than waiting, which is admittedly sometimes to my detriment. And I think it probably comes down to maybe because, in a weird way, if you're taking those risks, it then doesn't feel like it's as much, your fault. It's kind of like you're thinking, well, I could have played this properly in defensive, but instead I've gone out to try and make something happen. So I can almost slightly push the blame aside because I know I could have played really defensive here. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's just a psychological thing.
I guess it comes down to sort of how risk averse you are, doesn't it, in a way as well? Like some players really don't like to put anything on the line, but there can be big reward for doing that.
Absolutely, and it depends what you want. Sorry, Jamie?
Yeah, I think people like to feel that they lost trying to win a game rather than sitting back trying not to lose. And then if you just lose it, you're like, perhaps I should have gone for it. Whereas if you've gone for it, you say, look, I put my cards on the table. It wasn't good enough this time. Maybe next time.
And sometimes it's just fun to see what happens when X crashes into Y, right? You're like, I want to know. I don't know. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. I want to try. I've got to throw something in and see what happens.
So I kind of split it into defensive and attacking, but I think there are other areas. So I think in terms of play style, are you the sort of person that's interested in shenanigans?
Yes.
So I can give quite a good example here. For me personally, I thought I was interested in shenanigans. So in 8th edition, before GSC came out, I was like, I've heard in the grapevine they're going to be good. I'm going to get a full GSC army, going to get painted. I'm going to smash face. I took that army. I hated it with a burning passion because for me, I'm a massive overthinker when it comes to this sort of thing, and I will try and run all the different combinations of what could happen. So when I used to play chess, you like think 3-4 moves ahead. I'll do this, they'll do this. I do this, you're trying to do that. When you're doing that with something like Gene Stealer Cult, on my first tournament list, had 35 units in. So if you're trying to do turn 1, right, where do I deploy things? Turn 2 and 3, I have 17 units to deep strike down. What am I going to do? And it was just option overload. And so from that, I know that style of army, an army which gives me a huge toolbox to use, just doesn't work for me because I'm unable to make those decisions quickly enough and kind of like efficient. So I need something which actually has not a minimal amount, because I don't find it interesting. But I need some of that. But at the same time, I've, very much like computer games where it's not an open world. I like the computer games where I'm like, oh, there's 2 paths here. I'll go down this one, get the fun thing, come back, and then carry on with the mission.
Yeah. So you've got that sense of choice, but not too much choice.
Exactly. So that kind of so I think you have to be a certain mindset to do that.
Yeah.
Jamie said about speed. Everyone likes speed. Realistically,
Speed's good. Speed's great.
Simple and effective. I think some people do just like simple and effective.
Definitely.
Some people just like taking 40 Terminators and marching them straight down the middle of the boards. Naming their names.
Paul, we're looking at you. But and I think that's right, because I think kind of what this too falls perhaps on a spectrum, right? And I think with playstyles in general, it's useful to think of these as spectrums that you'll find yourself somewhere on, rather than you're going to be A or B. And I think sort of fiddly, complex jankiness and sort of I guess quite chunky and simple in terms of units and combinations is definitely one. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both, right? GC the Cultures, you say, a great example. There's loads of stuff you can do with them. The reason you can do loads of stuff with them is because if it comes down to what happens if you hit me and I hit you, it's that they die. So you have to do all this other weird, complicated stuff to make them work, and that's the fun of it, right? It's sort of a game within the game.
I think it's important to note that you can obviously mix and match, though.
Oh, completely! You can.
You take this Dark Angels very simple tactic to an extent, but actually you can apply all the jank and all the shenanigans.
100%.
So you've got Paul, who's very good at the combat phase and making the most of it.
Movement, finesse, combat finesse.
You can apply your thought processes to that thing, because the rest is, rather than having to apply it across the phases.
Yes.
Because obviously, you've got some people who want to do a little bit in all the phases, and there's some people who are happy to just do the shooting phase, tail players, and the movement phase to an extent. Or Thousand Suns, they obviously lean more into one than the other. But some people like to be able to just have a bit of everything. And I think those are the sorts of things you probably want to be thinking of, or trying to work out what applies for you. Yeah,
definitely. Because that's the other thing, is that your playstyle, changing your playstyle doesn't have to mean changing armies altogether, right? You can often find within the same book or within the same army, there's different ways of playing them, right? So Dark Angels are a great example. Ravenwing got tons of jank. There's tons of janky rules in the Ravenwing side of things. They're not quite as powerful right now as the Deathwing, but there's lots of weird mobile sort of shenanigans that you can pull off with Ravenwing. So within different books, you'll often have different options. Likewise, Drakari, often quite a janky army, but if I built 9 Talos and a bunch of Grotesques, it's not very janky. It's just a big sledgehammer that's going to come flying at you, and it's hard to kill. So you can build, even within the same book, like 30 Aberrants for Gene Stealers. It's not that subtle, it's just a bunch of guys with hammers. It's not especially complicated. So even within the book or army that you love and you play, if you get a sense you want to move in a different direction on that scale, right, from mobile to static, reactive to proactive, whatever, sort of, I guess, shenanigans and maybe combination play to more kind of toolkit play with your units rather than anything else, you can make those changes within a book. Definitely. Any other kinds of play styles that we can think of, or sort of broad archetypes? Covered quite a few. I was thinking resilience versus glass cannon, because I think that's a big one for people. I think some people are very, very comfortable with their units dying, and I know I'm one of those players. If I'm not throwing meaningless little Xenos lives away, I don't really feel like I'm playing the game. I'm always very happy to have basically nothing left at the end. But I know I've got friends who find that style of play quite distressing and quite want to sort of keep their resources, conserve their resources and keep things together, and are very loath to throw anything away. And so I guess your glass cannons and your horde or MSU type armies are better for if you like sacrificing things and disposing things and trading. But then obviously your very durable armies, your Death Guard, your Dark Angels. What other armies are resilient? Custodes, yeah, exactly, are more suited for that quite sort of grindy play. Obviously, let's talk about how they are in theory, Chris. All right, that's definitely one archetype, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and It's quite easy, I think, you can start to slide down the personal kind of like what you are interested in terms of other things. So obviously a vehicle style list is going to be realistically could cover a wide variety of play styles, and that's going to be a different thing that you're going to want to kind of like take into account. Are you more of an infantry guy or a vehicle guy, or do you want to?
Yeah, because that's an archetype you see, right? Sort of vehicle or monster skew is another one, right? You go loads of big stuff. Some people love that stuff, like Monster Mash. You know, lots of big guys. There's a lot of Chaos players who aren't happy unless it's like Be'lakor and some other big bastard and a bunch of big demons and running around. You know, some people love that style. And infantry. I mean, obviously, infantry is kind of in vogue just because of the addition. But you do get your people who really love their kind of infantry toolkit armies where they're all doing important jobs as well. Hero Hammer, that's another one I got noted down. Some people love to make characters the sort of focal point of their list, focal point of their army building, and some armies are better for that than others. Blood Angels, I guess, Jamie, quite a good Hero Hammer army.
Yeah. I don't know if they're heroes or hammers. They're there just to be sacrificed, I think.
I know.
It's angels sacrifice.
Heroes get hammered, basically.
Yeah. Heroes take the hits so everything else can do the hammering. Yeah. That's what they're there for. But yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there's some tanky builds there with obviously the chaplain with his multiple warlord traits and relics. So, yeah, they're definitely the focal point of the army. You know, the sort of units revolve around the heroes, but unfortunately, they don't hit quite as well as they used to. Yeah.
And some armies don't really have that, I guess, in as much, you know, your guard or Tau. Or I mean, Tau commanders are a bit hero hammery, but it's not sort of daring do, is it? They kind of fly around shooting things.
It's not as exciting as Dante. No way.
Nothing's as exciting as Dante.
Or Gabriel Seth dropping in a pod.
Oh, Gabriel Seth. I must give Gabriel Seth a run out.
What a guy.
He's so great. He is so great. But I think we've covered a lot of the main ones there. I think Elite versus Horde we've kind of touched on, but sort of, are you someone who likes to have tons of little units, tons of little options? Are you someone that likes to have a few moving parts and just get the most out of those? That's requires completely different playstyles in the contemporary game, right? Because secondaries and stuff all hinge on what you've got. How many things do you have? Can you realistically do a certain set of tasks, or do you have to play a different style of game based on what you've got available? So lots of different ways and combinations. I think we've covered a lot of the main ones there. Any others you guys can think of before we move on?
No, not that I can think of.
Sweet. Okay, well, what we'll do is start answering some of the questions. So my good friend Martin asked, how do I work out what my play style is? That's question number one. How can you, as a 40k player, start figuring out what your play style is? It's an interesting question. Anyone want to kick us off? I think
Borrow Hammer is something that I think more people should look into before you commit to spending £300, £400, £500 on starting an army, because obviously we all know it's not a cheap hobby. Is that, you know, if we've all got friends that play the hobby, otherwise we wouldn't really be getting into it. So everyone tends to have multiple armies. Feel free to ask anyone to borrow them for a game. I think that there's no way of learning what you enjoy other than going out, throwing some dice and seeing what you like. So I think Borrow Hammer is something that none of us really do enough of. You know, that there's some armies that I think, I'd love to see how that plays. It's like, well, I know people who've got the army, just ask them. No one's going to say no. You know, we're one big community here. So I think the more we enjoy it, the more everyone grows. So
yeah. I think that's completely right. And I think, as you say, and we've talked about this before, it's an enormously expensive and time-consuming hobby, right? So if you get like 24 hours of painting and £400 in, and then you discover you don't like something, that's rubbish. Yeah. So you've got. I was going to say GSC. It takes a long time to get to that point. I love them. They are hard work, but I do love them. And it's one of the things where, as you say, people around you almost always have an army spare. No one's playing everything they own all the time. There's also the sort of online world, you know, tabletop simulator, all that stuff. I know a lot of people in lockdown tested armies and that kind of thing with that. That's obviously an acquired taste, but that's another way of trying things as well. So I think those are definitely important things to try and do. Any other pointers, Chris, for finding your playstyle?
No, especially I think it's the only way you're ever going to find your play style is by playing the game. And however you can do that is ideal. I guess what you could say is also about who you play against.
Yeah.
So for me personally, playing the GSC led me to play against Mark with his Necrons, and playing into Necrons who weren't particularly great in 8th edition at the time. Actually, I was like, well, they do all the different things and they seem quite interesting. Picked up some Necrons, started playing them, and actually really enjoyed the style. And then through that, then built a bit more into like Flying Gunline and discovered that I really, really enjoyed that. And that came purely from playing against people and thinking that looks like a fun army to lose, or I'm losing to, or whatever. And like they get to do all these cool things. But yeah, that's definitely one. But yeah, I think, as Jamie says, we don't borrow hammer enough, but Thousand Sons were always an army I considered starting when I very first got into the hobby, because of Lee. If Lee didn't collect Thousand Sons, I would have collected Thousand Sons. I'm really glad I didn't, because now I've experienced them at an event and it just wasn't my style of play.
Yeah.
And even though I thought it would be, because I was like, it's like the psychic phase would be great fun, and you can get all these shots and that, but it just didn't cover enough of the bases that I'm interested in. But I was only ever going to learn that by playing his army, and it turns out playing 5 games in 2 days really does help you discover that for yourself.
Yeah.
So, I would highly recommend the old borrow hammer and just making a day of it. Just
definitely
training days with your friends, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's sound advice, because if you can avoid the moment of discovery about a style not being for you being after an enormous amount of investment, then that's great. But obviously, I mean, the nice thing about the hobby is you can sell an army on and get another one. It's not a disaster, but it's the time, right? It's the time and energy and emotional effort put into thinking about an army and working it all out and everything else.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I had that with the Drakari as well. That I ran at LGT. I think that's the first army I'd been playing before for 4 or 5 years. I think Drakari was the first army I've ever completely fully painted, and then played them at LGT, and I just didn't enjoy them at all.
Just weren't for you.
Yeah, and then off
it's an interesting one, because I'd always meant to ask you about that. So was it a sort of fragility thing for you? Was it just the fact that they just blow over so easy?
I couldn't put my finger on any one point that I was like, you know what, I don't enjoy this. It's just something about the playstyle. I was just it just didn't click. Just didn't feel right. And you got to pay
attention to that, don't you?
Yeah, you spend a lot of money going to these events and things. You want to be playing something you enjoy, and I couldn't tell you why it didn't click. Just something didn't feel right. So yeah.
I had that with the AdMech, because obviously what glossed over the fact that it was a bit average for me was because I was just destroying everyone, because the army was so powerful.
Yeah.
And when you're winning, like, life's great, and I was killing all my opponent. But
winning a GT definitely softened that blow, didn't it?
Yeah, help you get over it.
But going to after the nerf and not being able to take the planes, what I then realised was the fact that what I liked about the army was the fact it reminded me to an extent of like the old Necron thing with the planes going into places and getting that reach and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what I didn't particularly like was just moving 20-man infantry blocks forward and just gunning things down. And the army is very much that kind of style now. And obviously not many people are playing AdMech. So actually the fact that I was doing well with the army kind of overshadowed the fact that I wasn't actually really enjoying it. And as soon as the army was no longer just hyper-tuned and ridiculously overpowered, it then made me realise that the play style wasn't something I wanted to carry on with. I mean, I'm sure I'll return to them at some point. It'd be fun just to see how they do. I mean, I think in the current meta, AdMech just don't have the AP, unfortunately, to deal with anything. Like, they just wouldn't be able to kill the Terminators anymore. But yeah, so that for me there was always a niggle, as you say, Jamie. There was always a niggle that this isn't quite right, but it only came about after something changed with the army.
And I think it can be perhaps good if you've got a sense like that, it can be good to sort of write that stuff down, I think, or to be taking note of it, right? Take note of and try and work it out. If you've got that feeling, as you know, as Jamie says, I think that feeling's a very real one where either within the army you're playing or between armies you have something's not clicking, something's not gelling, and trying to actually work out what that is and sort of assess that probably gives you a better chance of working out what it is about the army or that you'd want to change, or what it is about something else that might work better for you, right? And as I said, so a friend of mine, recurring theme was casualties, right? He was playing Sisters for a long time, and Sisters are one of those armies where you can score great, but a lot of stuff is going to die whilst you do it, right? And that's how they play well. And actually, he was a very sort of conservative player, wanted to keep his resources together and wanted to take his time, but was struggling to get the best out of Sisters for a long time because that's not how Sisters play. Sisters wanted to go and chuck stuff and get involved and trade and make things happen. And then, sorry, you go.
But yeah, I think immersion as well. I think you've got to believe in what you're playing.
Yeah.
The lore is such a huge part of this hobby that I think a lot of people overlook. You know, you see all the high end players just jumping on the strongest codex, and I think a lot of newer players think, well, that must be the way to play. But you know, we all absorb so much lore and the like. I think that might have been part of the problem I had with the Drukhari. Is like, to me, I mean, I haven't read a lot of their lore, but to me, they just seem like the bad guys for bad guys' sake. It seems a little bit shallow to me. As a Marvel fanboy, I like the whole Thanos thing. Is that he's a bad guy, but he's got the right idea, just the wrong way of going about it. And to me, Drukhari just seem a bit, we're bad for the sake of being bad. It's just, it didn't ring true with me. And that might have had something to do with why. You know, I got into the army thinking, they're quick, they're fun, that's the sort of thing I'm looking for. But the lore never really clicked, and that probably started what was the cascade of me just not enjoying the army and selling them on and jumping on. I
think that definitely matters, though, right? And I think especially ninth books have been quite good at making armies play, broadly speaking, like they're written to play. And so having an army where you buy into the lore and you want to play them in that particular way and you enjoy that. Well, GSC is a good example, right? GSC end up basically in the underdog position all the time because that's their job. That's what they do. They're a bunch of guys with mining tools popping out from behind a rock to try and kill much better equipped warriors. So it often goes that way, and that's kind of the story that you're playing out. And so you have to be invested in that and be enjoying that for it to work out. And I think that's an important point. And you want a playstyle that links up to what you like in the stories and what you like in the lore as well. But I think it's trial and error, isn't it, as well, to a large extent. I think there's also just a case of you learn by doing, you learn over time. I started on Death Guard, and what I learned very quickly with Death Guard was I don't like being slow at all. I'm not a fan of being slow. Can't get over it. I love the Death Guard, love the lore of the Death Guard. But I cannot deal with making a move and being like, oh, well, it'll take me 2 turns to correct that now. I've got it wrong and there's nothing I can do about it, and just being stuck somewhere. And so immediately my wandering eyes looked over at some elves and thought, well, they look very quick and fast and they get wherever they want to go whenever they want to do it. And so you kind of, by process of elimination, you find the things that you identify, things that perhaps you're very keen to try and keen to have, and you kind of work through things that way. A bit of patience is definitely going to be worthwhile with playstyles. I think that's the other thing, is it's the first couple of games with an army can be quite jarring because it's always quite alien and it's quite new. And actually, sometimes you just need that bedding in of the basics and the rules and things before it all starts to make sense and you start to understand an army the way that it's intended to be played, right?
Yeah. I think a codex that can play sort of any play style is an ideal place to start. Something like Space Marines, because then you can allow your gameplay to evolve naturally.
Yes.
Make it an organic process rather than thinking, I'm sure I'll like a fast assault army, I'll just go for that. It's like, well, collect a little bit of everything, and when you play your generic, say, Space Marines army that's got a little bit of everything, you think, oh, that's the part of the game I enjoyed, or this is the part I enjoyed. I think if you let it grow organically, I think you're going to enjoy it a lot more rather than trying to force yourself into a gameplay that you think you're going to enjoy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think probably there are some books and some factions out there that are better for that than others, right? Space Marine is a great example because there's lots of different ways to play Space Marines. There's a million different flavors of them. So once you've got those models, you can try them in lots of different ways, and that's quite exciting. And so I guess it's the larger books. I think Eldari, I think Tyranids, I think those kinds of factions where they actually really contain several factions. Ultimately, there's almost several factions going on. Those big, broad church armies usually give you more leeway to try different things in different directions, which kind of leads us on to one of the questions that we had, because we were asked by Sean what kind of play styles and armies are best for new players. And I think Space Marines is a good example for that, right? Because they're flexible, they're versatile, they're sort of jack of all trades, and you can play different sub-factions. But what makes a good first army or new army for a new player, do we think?
Definitely survivability.
Yeah, I agree with that.
For a new player, playing something like GSC where one wrong move and half your army's disappeared must be soul-destroying.
Yes, agreed. So forgiving, that's a term we hear a lot in 40k. But you want an army that's forgiving. You want to make mistakes and not lose hundreds and hundreds of points, because that's what certainly I think most flavors of Elf and GSC very much come down to that, where it's Sisters as well to a lesser extent. If you're out of position, well then it's gone. So armies that are forgiving, Marines, Death Guard, Custodies are quite forgiving, I think. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think in 8th edition maybe more so. I think the game's just become so...
Yeah, the problem is the game's
so destructive now, right?
You have to... Yeah, I think you need to... You got. I guess you got two army styles, haven't you? You got the army which kills your opponent and wins the game that way, and you got the one that plays the mission better, hides, dies gradually at the end, has no models, and but you've won on points. That's probably a bit harder to play, and that is what something like Custodies is like.
Yeah.
Because they are always dying as the game goes on, and you just haven't got enough models. I think. Adding to your forgiveness point, like speed is obviously a huge thing.
Yeah.
Survivability is one thing, but I've mispositioned. My jet bike will move 22 inches.
Yeah. So that's the plus side of the fragile stuff is where speed is also forgiving in a different way. Yeah.
Knights are probably... I mean, I've never played Knights.
Yeah, I think
people,
Knights always seem to be a lot of fun to play. I think at events, Knights always seem to go... they're in every game. They ask a very serious question.
Exactly. People
have to try and answer it one way or the other. So I think Knights are quite a good example because they're very, very tough to kill. And you've got a bunch of big multi-use models that not too many moving parts to keep track of. I don't know whether the new books are going to change that.
Is it? Like, at the end of the day, what complicates this game is when you've got 15, 20 units to try and link together and synergize, and characters buffing units and making sure you're positioned in all the right ways. So if you can remove that from your list and have more like either a death ball going down the middle or just like a few big things which are kind of self-reliant, I think that will help to an extent.
So sort of avoiding having too many different rules layers in play.
Yeah.
Definitely. Cool. Excellent. Well, I think we've answered a lot of the key questions that we had here. So we talked about finding out before committing to an army. We talked about what kind of play styles there are and how you can work that out. And what kind of play styles and armies are best for new players. So we covered quite a lot of ground. Guess I'm trying to think what other ground we might want to cover.
So it'll be what armies fit which play styles.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so what? Yeah, so maybe if we work our way through some of the different armies and thinking about what kinds of play styles you can get out of them, that might be useful. So we'll start in the Imperium. Space Marines, you can do all sorts, but it's elite, essentially, right? You can cover a very melee, very mobile. You can play sit back and shoot. You can play lots of vehicles. You can play snipers and shenanigans, heroes. but the recurring theme is you're not going to have tons of stuff because they're Space Marines and there's less bodies on the pitch in general, but they're one of those books that you can build in a whole range of different ways. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
How about the Imperial Guard?
I mean, it's not going to be an elite, is it? So Imperial Guard, you're going to have to be someone who wants a large amount of bodies, but can shoot your opponent.
It could be like the leaf blower list, like I'm just going to have 15 tanks here and try and kill you before you can move.
Yeah, but they're defensive, aren't they? They're ranged. They're relatively static, although you've got movement with the troops, and that's where the magic is, getting your troops around and doing the mission and all those kinds of things. But they're a gun line type army. They've got a lot of guns, they've got a lot of tanks, got a lot of bodies, but they are not melee experts. They're not going to pull up trees in combat and go and sort of pin the enemy in and trap them in combat. So you're going to be relying on your guns and your good use of tanks and the movement of your infantry to get things done. How about the AdMech, Chris?
Well, it used to be an Alpha Strike army. And
I was going to say they definitely were an Alpha Strike army, weren't they?
So they were that style. These days, they're kind of a move up towards the mid-board and shoot whilst having the counter-attack threat. So I think they cover that kind of mid-board reasonably well. Mm-hmm. It's just, if you're the sort of person who wants to play the psychic phase, obviously you're not really going to get to do that.
No.
They haven't got heroes that are going to kill. So if you're excited to use that, then they're not going to do that.
Yeah, there's no hero hammer in AdMech at all, is there really?
There's a bit of jank, a small amount.
Yeah.
You've got like Cerberus Raiders running away when they're charged and that sort of thing. They can assassinate characters with their mortal wounds. No lookout pistols. So you got a bit of jank there.
Yeah, they've definitely got a bit more by way of sort of jank and shenanigans than some of the Imperium, don't they? They've got a few tricks and tools.
Absolutely. They haven't got a lot of kind of like high damage stuff. Like obviously we had the Las Chickens, but other than that, it's mostly just 1-2 damage, and in combat as well, it's Rostalkers with the mortal wounds and that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're very nice.
They cover a lot of the bases, and it used to be just pure amount of output. So if that's the sort of thing you're shooting, but they have got some combat. They've got a lot of tricks. You just have to realise that the complicated part is the command phase with that army, and that does take a bit of time to.
Yeah, I was going to say they are a big synergies and rules layers army, aren't they? In terms of
not for beginners.
I think it's because it's largely all layering on to shoot stuff and not die as well.
Yeah, into certain units. This Ranger blob, it is not going to die, and it's going to hopefully kill something.
Yeah. How about the Adeptus Sororitas?
My knowledge on the sisters is minimal. Hopefully it'll be a bit better this weekend after a tournament alongside them. But
I think they're kind of the Eldar of the Imperium, in that as much as they're MSU, they're lots of small units. They've got good precision melee and precision shooting, but they're quite fragile.
Yeah, they're very fragile.
And then they've got a lovely layer of rules jank with miracle dice and the characters like Celestine and Morgenbach give you that real sort of hero hammer, but slightly janky hero hammer going on as well. So I think they're quite a fun army in that sense, where they give you that fragile MSU vibe, but they've got lots of good delivery mechanisms as well, with good deep strike charges and good shooting and that kind of thing.
They cover a lot of the bases, don't they?
They do. They can do a lot of things well.
And they can build in so many ways. Like Jamie at the moment is obviously running 9 Paragon Warsuits. But you could quite just have I remember when the book first came out and people were like, I'm just going to take 3 units of everything, MSU, and you could legitimately do that. So I think it's quite nice. They can be built in a large amount of ways, but they are definitely that army which, if you just stick out, then they're just going to die. So you need to kind of throw them like missiles and wait for your moment. So as you say, they're the Eldari.
They're quite glass cannony in some ways. How about the Custodes? We kind of briefly touched them already, but
they're just they used to have a wide variety But I mean, you can take kind of like anything. You can take the speed of the bikes. You can take the toughness of the dreadnoughts. The troops are tough. You just have to be prepared these days that you can't just stick your head out and move towards the board. You're going to have to be prepared to be hiding and that sort of thing. They're obviously an elite army, so you need to maximize. You need to maximize the use of every single unit. So I guess they're going to appeal to someone who likes to do like the hiding and surprising and really picking a point to attack on the battlefield and like a precision strike kind of thing. That's what you're not going to get many models in there. Your output isn't that great. You're not going to blow people off the table realistically. So that's kind of it. Really.
No, they're quite grindy melee in many ways, aren't they? They don't have masses of shooting.
No.
Imperial Knights, again, we touched on this. They're big, they're massive, they shoot a lot. They're very shooty army knights. They have to take the punches as well because they can't hide that well. So it's very much a here we are, what can you do about this kind of army? All about using that massive amount of firepower and applying it in the right places. And I think with knights, actually, the art of it is guiding you and herding your opponent towards the knights that you don't mind losing. I think that's where the sort of the high level knights play seems to be, in kind of making sure that your biggest and best knights get through the game, and the smaller war dogs and other things take one for the team. And you've usually got one or two knights that you're happy to get out there and get killed, and sort of managing to get those big players in late into the game so that they can really run away with it once the opponent runs out of ways of hurting knights.
Yeah.
Nice. I think that's largely it for the Imperium. I'm not going to pretend that the Inquisition have a play style that anyone would recognise or get anything out of. Don't play Inquisition.
Faction.
Don't play Inquisition. Alex Chancellor, I'm looking at you. What are you doing? Stop it, you madman. Armies of Chaos. Demons. Our boy Lee likes Chaos Demons. Where would we put demons?
Horde.
Yeah. Horde,
or Monster Mash.
Horde or Monster Mash. That's it. You kind of have there is a spectrum. There is a choice. You can go lots of little bodies or big crazy beasts. They're not a ranged army, really.
No.
So it's psychic and fighting, but they're good
at
those.
Jank.
They love jank, love shenanigans.
Lee doesn't kill anything with his Disciples of Be'lakor list. But
they're quite board controlling in that way, aren't they? They're about choking up the board, and they'll often get killed, but it's whether they've managed to get killed and hold everything up for long enough.
Yeah.
So quite a grindy army in that sense.
Yeah, it's one you have to take the time to get to know well. I don't think it's an army that someone can just drop on and start to see results in the first few months, sort of thing. It's
no, not at all.
Yeah, maybe the old Slanesh Monster Mash is a bit more like that, but like the Disciples of Be'lakor, I think there's a lot of movement shenanigans and objective blocking, things like that.
No, they need careful
only
play.
comes with practice. Yeah.
No, definitely. They're esoteric. It'll be interesting to see if their new book maintains that. You'd expect it to. Chaos Knights, we talked about Imperial Knights, just the same, but with spikes on, so you're fine. Chaos Space Marines, they fall quite into the alpha beta strike territory, don't they? Because they quite like to dump a load of Terminators into you or drop some Obliterators down, and they're all about massive damage at a few key moments, aren't they, really? That's what they're very good at. And certainly good Chaos Space Marines lists in recent times are often that kind of relentless, here's more stuff, here's more stuff, here's more stuff. Emperor's Children just charging and charging and charging. And
Double Shoot and Honor the Prince. And
yeah, exactly. All those big damage strats that are essentially a legacy of 8th, and we'll see whether that's how they continue to play in a month or two. But that's very much what they're about. Do massive damage, and hopefully that'll get you through. Death Guard. Eat away slowly, move up slowly, control the board, try and choke the opponent out that way, take more damage than you're supposed to, and be around that little bit longer.
Yeah, I think especially with Armour of Contempt, their Terminators are awful to get rid of now.
Yeah.
I faced them with my Grey Knights last week, and the mortal wounds were a godsend, because without those, you just can't chew through them anymore. They are scary tough. So I think for a beginner that's looking for that style of play where I'm going to march up the board and not die and slowly whittle you down, I think they're an incredible army to sort of get into.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're a good first army because of the forgivingness, but also you will learn every element of the game with Death Guard, because they shoot, they fight, They do psychic powers. They have important synergies. They don't, the real power in the book is combinations and layers that you only learn over time. You can play a great big bastard in Mortarion. You can have lots of Terminators. You can have some tanks. You can do all sorts. But you've also got that kind of chaffy, hoardy element with Poxwalkers and Cultists. So lots of different ways to try Death Guard as well. Very nice. Thousand Suns, Chris.
As our resident Thousand Suns expert.
Yeah. Move aside.
Best Thousand Suns player I know, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think you have to want to be prepared to stay on your side of the board and shoot lots and lots of shots. Not high damage shots, lots and lots of shots. You want to be able to enjoy, obviously, the psychic phase, but you have to be prepared. A hard learning curve is getting your units all in the right space to buff each other, cast the spells on each other. So it's not an easy army to use in the slightest. I think you do need a lot of practice, and I'm not just making these excuses for myself. And you can see there are definite things which are fun there, but you have to accept that you're not going and blowing people away in spectacular style. You've got 10 Terminators that can tank a huge amount of stuff, and can also one-shot a tank with that amount of shooting. That's just how good they can be. But yeah, you've got to love really upsetting your opponent, because Mortal Winds do that, and Tars are quite good at that. But yeah, you've not got the maneuverability. So if you're looking for fast armies and that sort of thing, it's not for you. You want to be the sort of person who likes to stay in your bubble, and which, interestingly enough, would 100% have been teenage me. And that would have been me. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to move forward slowly, I'm going to shoot and gun down everything in my area, I'm going to play to my part of the board. You're going to die, then I'm going to move out. So yeah, I think that's the sort of style.
No, definitely. And they're quite techy, right? There's a lot of layers with the Cabal points and the different powers, and you need to have a very clear grasp of a lot of the intricacies of that before they really start singing, I think. Nice. Xenos. Eldari, Craft Worlds. Let's talk Craft Worlds. Craft Worlds are... There's a lot of different ways to play Craft Worlds, but they're a shooting glass cannon army at their heart, right? With good psychic support. They're about engaging at a distance on your terms, or coming in real quick to finish something off on your terms. They're about hiding and fighting at the right times, and they're about layering on psychic powers to make all your little units do their jobs better. You can play them in different ways with wraiths and play for resilience that way, but they're probably at their best as a shooting and psychic army and a speed army, but one that has to pick its fights very carefully, because they're not naturals in combat and they don't like it up them.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. Drakari are on a similar scale, but perhaps further down the combat scale and further off the shooting scale, right? They don't have as much by way of guns. They do have some guns, but not many. What they're all about is brutalizing things in combat. But again, because they're elves, it has to be on their terms, which means you've got to use your speed, you've got to use your timing, you've got to use your nasty shenanigans with warlord traits, relics, and other things to make sure that you fight on your terms and not on somebody else's.
A trading army, aren't they?
They are a trading army. They're a hero hammer army as well. That's my favourite thing about Drakari. You can just build so many very murderous characters, and you've got some sensational trade units that will just go in and absolutely brutalise things in combat.
It was like our game we played when you charged your succubus into my 10 dark Harlequins, and I was like, oh no, the 60-point model is about to kill a 170-point unit, which can go and technically punch up, because when I played Lee, my 170-point Harlequin unit killed his 450-point Terminator unit. So you've got this huge thing. I was like, this is such a bad trade. Thankfully, you then rolled
she whiffed phenomenally hard.
She
sadly,
whiffed in quite an impressive way.
She really screwed the pooch on that one. She let everybody down. But that's right. It's that kind of army, right, where your cheap nasty unit suddenly gets in somewhere it's not supposed to be, and everything explodes. Obviously, you can build them to be tanky. You can go Coven heavy, but they're mainly all about that lightning fast melee trading. Necrons. What are Necrons about?
Well, in 8th edition, back in the glory days, they were all about 3 Doom Size, 3 Doomsday Arc, 3 Tesseract Arc, pow, pow, pow. Highly maneuverable, shoot with D6 shots, D6 damage, all that fun stuff. Then 9th hit, and it was just, here's 80 warriors. We're going to sit in the middle of the board, and we're going to hold all the objectives and die slowly, but not really hurt you. These days, I think they're more of a Silent King, which is a fun model to use, and kind of like destroy cult stuff, or race, and just... They're definitely that style of army, which is I'm going to run at you, I'm going to trap you, I've got everything obsec, I'm going to pre-game move, I'm going to get into your lines really quickly. I have a tiny amount of output, but not a huge amount. No. And then I'm going to die slowly, and I'm going to hopefully have a big enough points lead that you can't come back from. And there are players out there who are doing really well with Necrons. Yeah. There are various builds, you can run 3 Catan, and they're a lot of fun. They're just overcosted, but they are a lot of fun, and firing off those mortal wounds and that sort of thing. You can still, so if you want to be the sort of person that just runs at your opponent, they are very maneuverable if you want to build that way.
They're quick, deceptively quick.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to be the person that sits in the middle of the board and slowly dies, you can build it that way. Hero Hammer's a bit harder because obviously you've got the Silent King, you can have an Annihilation Barge, or Command Barge, and they do a little bit, but there's no big scary characters.
It's so expensive, their characters, aren't they?
Yeah,
That's
the characters,
part of the
at the moment, it just feels like their characters are too expensive to play Hero Hammer well.
Exactly.
But they're an interesting combination of quick and resilient, right? And combine that with the obsec, and you get a proper board control. And as you say, it goes out, it chokes everything up, and it wins if the opponent can't deal with that at the right times in the right places to clean them off the board and get some points of their own. Yeah. But doesn't feel like they're packed much by way of ranged threat right now. They're not really a shooting. I haven't really seen shooting defensive Necron builds.
I mean, you can do. It's just not reliable enough. I mean, a lot of your big guns are D6 shots, D6 damage, which is laughable when you compare to the sort of stuff that the current books are putting out. It's just crazy, the comparison. And you got stuff like the Locust Heavy Destroyers, but again, just one shot on one model is just... There's no quantity there.
How about orcs?
Orcs.
What are orcs like?
They've covered a lot of bases, haven't they, in their time? They've been...
Yeah, I think orcs can be all sorts of things,
Just not good at the moment. Content. So don't start orcs unless you are a proper orc boy.
Yeah, I mean, in recent times, they've been like a vehicle skew army. They've been an infantry horde army. They've got tremendous damage in different places, but also tremendous variance, don't they? Because it can go really right or it can go really wrong. You've just got
so many dice rolls, but they're hitting on 5s
volume
and 6s.
Volume and swinginess.
So if it spikes the right way, you're laughing.
Yeah. And they're another army, I think, right now that needs to play to really dominate the board and get a lead and die off that way.
Just kind of punch you in the face quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Melee pressure and advanced vehicle pressure being the main ways that they do that. So they're a very proactive army in that sense, but suffering a little bit in the current meta.
Well done, Kieran. Kieran's doing well with them.
Yeah, Kieran's doing well with them. G&C, the cults, we've talked about them a lot during the show, but they are jank and shenanigans and popping up from holes and deep strike. They like a beta strike. They don't do alpha strike that well, but they do like a beta strike, popping up from holes in turn 2 and pulling some shenanigans, trying to put the hurt on. Definitely more of a combat army than a shooting army. Their shooting is lackluster. If you want to watch our recent battle report to see some lackluster shooting, I highly recommend it. You want to see some stuff, not do stuff, that's where you go. But in melee, they are insufferable. As long as they fight on their terms, they've got that glass cannon about them as well. But some nice psychic powers and layers and very, very cool stratagems. They're one of those armies where actually a lot of the power isn't on the data sheets themselves. It's in all of the cool stratagems you can use to get the most out of the units. Tau Empire, Jamie, what did Tau Empire do?
I think there's 2 major playstyles there with the Tau. There's the sit back castle Tau Empire / Borkan builds where we're going to sit 36, 42 inches away from you, and every time something pops out to get a bit closer, we're going to blow it away and then move out on objectives later. And then there's obviously the hyper-aggressive Farsight Enclaves build, which unfortunately got a bit nerfed, but it's definitely, I think, the most exciting. And yeah, for both players, I think really, I'm going to drop in 9 to 12 inches away from you, try and blow you up, but if not, then you're going to slap me super hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is super enjoyable. Yeah, I don't enjoy the castle build too much, but it is a bit more beginner friendly. So if you want an entrance into the army, I think that's definitely the way to go. And then as you build more confidence with it, then obviously there's more mobile and aggressive play styles that you can play with the models that you were using before, but just in a different way. So.
And they're one of those armies that can go super elite, right? With like basically 3 squads of guys can be the bulk of a Tau list sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, or just 3 models in the Storm Surges. People running just 3 models, and that's 900.
Storm Surge, 120 crit.
Storm Surge. Oh man.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think
Taunar,
they are fairly
better.
Yeah, 1,000-point Taunar that shoots about as well as a 300-point Storm Surge, but it does look awesome. I need to get it on the channel as soon as possible. But no, they can be beginner friendly just because they can keep their opponents at arm's length fairly easily with some crude screens and super aggressive shooting. And then as you learn the jank and the fun rules, then you can definitely play a more aggressive army and fight for the midboard. So
I think they do look fun. Like having played your lists, which have the Devilfish and the Creep pushing forward.
As soon as you get mobility in, they become very interesting.
Deep strike coming down in the areas and just blapping anything.
Yeah.
You've got that character that can also be quite tasty in combat. Yeah, I think they do look. I think they actually look a fun army to play.
I think they're a really good like second or third army because I think that you have to really learn to maximize the 2 or 3 phases they do their best work in. You don't have you haven't got psychic powers, you haven't got much melee. They've got a smattering of melee, but not lots, which means that timing and movement and shooting is all absolutely crucial. And if you don't use those things right, it's very tricky.
Yeah, if you fail to kill something in shooting, you can't just charge a squad.
That's
in.
It. There's no sort of don't worry, I'll send someone in to sort of clean up. It's like if you haven't done it, you haven't done it.
As you know, Jamie. As you know,
target priority.
Very much so. So they're not an easy one, Tau, but played well, they are really quite an interesting one, and people always struggle playing against.
No one enjoys a Tau matchup today.
I think if they're not casting, it's all right. It's quite fraught when it's just I'm running at your castle because that's going one or two ways.
But you're always just worried, aren't you, that you get it slightly wrong and your army is gone.
Just toast. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
toast.
if they roll hot for one turn, they could literally pick up your entire army.
Tyranids. Tyranids is our last one. Tyranids can do a bit of all of it.
Just win all the games.
I think you can play. Tyranids any which way. I think there's all sorts going on in there.
You got Horde.
You got Horde. You got Monster Mash. You got shooting. You got psychic powers. A lot of psychic powers right now. Very scary melee. I think they are the complete package at this moment in time.
Yeah. So just go buy a Tyranid army.
Go and buy a Tyranid army. Winning is the other thing they do. Winning is their play style. They win for days. They're very good.
Yeah, there's not really a bad data sheet in that codex at the moment, is there? They're really well internally balanced. Things that have been previously horrendous, like the Pyrovores that everyone's laughed at for the last 4 or 5 editions, have now been in a list that just won an open in the United States. So, I think you struggle to find a bad data sheet in there. So anything you like in that codex, play it, and it's going to play relatively well. Yeah, which is obviously always a good sign. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Okay. Right. Well, I think that takes us to the end of the show. We've thought about playstyles. We've thought about choosing an army. We've thought about what different armies might offer you. Get out there and try stuff. Report back. Let us know what works, what doesn't. What do you like? What do you not like?
What do you disagree with? Because I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Have we done any of your armies wrong? Have we missold you? Is there something to orcs we're not seeing? Please let us know. Is there an Inquisition list out there that I need to take seriously? I'd love to see that as well. If you can post that, that'd be very welcome. But we'll be back again soon. We have been the Plus. It's been a pleasure talking, and we'll see you all next time.
Till next time. Thank you very much.
Go and do something else.